Well, good afternoon. We are live. We are coming to you from the belly of the beast here in the Davies Pacific Center, downtown Honolulu. This is KGU AM 760, part of the Wall Street Business Network, and you can join the conversation by calling us at area code 808-296-5467. Today we've got a very unusual topic. We're going to be peeling back the wrapping paper, if you will, for an unusual gem that you perhaps don't know anything about, and that is the metropolis of Surabaya, Indonesia's spectacular manufacturing center. And with me in the studio today is Mr. Amin Leiman, president of the Hawaii-Indonesia Chamber of Commerce. And Amin, nice to have you with us, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, David. Thank you for inviting me back.
This is the second, ladies and gentlemen, of a series. There will be 3 parts to this over time, having to do with Indonesia. And those of you who are regular listeners, and oh, by the way, for those of you listening in Indonesia, we just want to give you a little shout out and thank you for joining the program. They are accessing the program as so many of you are on the streaming feature at KGU. Our series here on Indonesia of 3 programs. The first one we did a couple weeks ago, and that was a program in which my voice was a little bit weak, but we had the benefit of the experience of Jay Fidel doing the interviewing. And we were talking generally about Indonesia and its place in the Asia-Pacific region, the significance of this as a large Asian country that most Americans know very little about, and the tremendous economic firepower that Indonesia is bringing with consistent economic growth, some of the problems that the country was having, and the interesting bleed out that is beginning to take place of businesses out of China as China has its 7th consecutive quarter of economic downturn. Some would say that China is hitting the wall economically while Indonesia continues to roll forward. And we talked a little bit about, in that first segment, about the difference in the economic model in the economy between Indonesia and China. China, as you know, is an export-driven model that is, they admit themselves, is unsustainable, and they've got to convert to a consumption-driven model. In our prior show, we talked about a number of reasons why that's somewhere between extremely difficult and impossible for them to do over time. Whereas Indonesia is a consumption-driven model. It's not an export-driven model. They already have their middle class, and they already have a significant portion of their economy having to do with local domestic consumption. So by way of background and recap, that was our first show. And necessarily most Americans who've been to Indonesia focus on the capital city, as I have in my travels, of Jakarta. And today we want to talk a little bit about this unusual metropolis in East Java, Surabaya. And Surabaya is your hometown, right?
That is correct.
And before we get into Surabaya, maybe we should share with the audience the fact that you and I were together recently in Indonesia.
Correct. Right.
And why don't you tell the folks a little bit about the context of why we were in Indonesia together?
Well, this U.S. government program that funded a group of U.S. professors from the Midwest, Wisconsin, Iowa, and they're all pretty experienced senior professors.
These are business school professors.
Business school professor who were visiting Indonesia for the very first time. Okay, so it was their first experience.
So these are what you and I would call sophisticated neophytes.
Correct.
Okay, and right. So we were along as kind of the private sector escorts to help teach them a little bit about...
to help them, I guess, bridge the gap.
Right.
What they have seen in paper and what they will be, what they saw actually in person. Right.
So this group was involved in visiting Jakarta first?
Correct. So initially, we took them to Jakarta to see the macroeconomic view of the country. and then we took them to Surabaya to see the manufacturing capabilities of Surabaya and the growth explosion of the East Indonesia and East Java market. And then we took them to Bali to experience the unique culture of the island of Bali.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned to you that I regret that I was not able to join the group for the Surabaya and Bali portions, but thank you for covering for me.
Oh, no problem.
I understand you did a fabulous, fabulous job.
Everybody miss you.
So let's talk a little bit about the kind of your reflections a little bit about the macroeconomic view of Indonesia that was presented to this group of U.S. Business School professors. What comes to mind?
Well, the first thing is the economic growth rate, right, which has been in the past, I guess, 2-3 years around 6%, and is going to be projected at 6% as well.
Very steady.
Very, very steady. And then if you look at the East Java projection as a province, which is the capital of the East Java, is Surabaya, is 7%, so it's even more aggressive. So from that angle is what's fueling the economy. You mentioned earlier about the domestic consumption, but within the domestic consumption, who were the demographic, right? So we talk about the rising middle class of Indonesia. Those are the people that are just the common people who are making more money now, and so they have more money to consume, right? So then from there, we took those professors to Surabaya to see the manufacturing capabilities of Surabaya.
So while in Jakarta, before we went to Surabaya, the one of the things that we did that I thought was really spectacular was introduce this group to the famous Lippo group, and their incredible cradle to grave supplier of real estate services.
Correct. I thought that was amazing. You probably recall their real estate development concept is end-to-end. The day you were born, which is hospital, and then the day you go to school, which is K-12 and then university, and then you have your apartment, you have condominium. But the most interesting aspect is the San Diego Hills. Remember the San Diego Hills Memorial, which is they're building this memorial facilities for people who aspire to go to the United States, but for some reason couldn't make it. So at least when you die, you can go to the U.S.
The San Diego Hills.
Right, the San Diego Hills. So I thought it was hilarious. and even this modern concept of Memorial Park is, you have sadness in the family, but you want to celebrate life rather than worrying about the people that have gone. And they built swimming pool, remember? So I thought it was interesting. Well, I think from economic perspective, I remember that we asked the question, so how did you get your funding building all these facilities? And as you recall, they said, well, we borrow U.S. bond at 6%, right? Yeah. It was unsecured loan. Unsecured loan, and that's our money that they're using, and to you create 100%, 200% return on the investment. I thought that was very interesting.
The other piece that was I think that was a real shocker for this group of business school professors was to see the incredible facilities of the Lippo University. There. I mean, unbelievable university that is just, come out of the ground.
Right. Yes, you probably remember when we approached the campus, the driver was somewhat lost, and then we had to make that U-turn.
Right.
And as we made the U-turn, you can see that there was a bunch of Muslim students with a Muslim outfit and everything else, because that was a Muslim school. And then as we went to this campus, Lippo campus, and all of a sudden the U.S. professors we saw scriptures, like Christian scriptures, right, all over the place.
In a Muslim majority country.
Exactly. So it was amusing. It's like, wow, amazing.
To that point, I after you left for Surabaya, and we'll get to Surabaya later on in the program, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry. I had a conversation with Jay Fidel in the first of this series, having to do with an experience that I had after you left, and that was to visit the largest mosque in Jakarta. And coming out of this mosque and turning around, and the host, Muslim host, making a big point of showing me across the street was the Roman Catholic cathedral.
Right.
And and standing in that position where 180 degrees you have the two religions directly across from each other, and I suppose there's a little competition for the call to prayer and ringing the cathedral bells at the same time. But what struck me at that moment was that this is why the United Nations has asked Indonesia to double the number of its peacekeepers, because these young boys in Indonesia raised with around all these different religions and a very tolerant society gives them a tremendous cross-cultural advantage in working the various international peacekeeping problems in the Middle East.
Right.
We'll be back. We're going to be talking about Surabaya when we come back. Stay with us. We are back, we are live, and this is the Wall Street Business Network. You can join the conversation by calling us at area code 808-296-5467. And before we continue with our discussion with Mr. Amin Leiman, President of the Hawaii-Indonesia Chamber of Commerce, on Surabaya, Indonesia's spectacular manufacturing center, I want to bring General Jay Fidel on, who is the CEO of ThinkTech, to talk about a fabulous program that is coming up at the Plaza Club. And so, Jay, what's happening?
Thank you, David. Well, you know, every month, ThinkTech and the Hawaii Venture Capital Association put on a program of public policy and general interest at the Plaza Club, and this month is no exception. On February 28th, on the fourth Thursday of February, as we always do it, we'll have transportation in Hawaii. How are we getting around these days? It's all about transportation, all about transporting people around the islands. Transportation, as you know, is very important to build an economy. So we're going to explore what parts are working and what parts may not be working so well. February 28th, ThinkTech Hawaii, Hawaii Venture Capital Association. Sign up on hvca.org. See you there, David. Back to you, David.
Okay, thank you. And so let's go back to our discussion. You know, the early part of this program, the first segment, if you missed it, we were talking about a country study undertaken by a series of business school professors from the Midwest that Amin Leiman and I escorted and provide some reflection and private sector views as they were learning about this very large Asian country that most Americans know very little about. And so we were talking in the first segment of this program principally about the initial visit to, a portion of the visit to the capital city of Jakarta. And we're going to move on now to an area of Indonesia that you probably know very little about. And these business school professors knew less about Surabaya than they did about Jakarta, that's for sure. But before we do that, I think it's important for you, ladies and gentlemen, to think back to 1967. And if you're really honest with yourself, very few people knew about Hawaii. Oh yeah, they made known it as a state. And so the beginning of 1967, that's when the East-West Center was formed. And for the ensuing years, Hawaii became, the basis was a bridge between East and West. And of course, that most of that bridge effectively, from a business standpoint, evaporated when Boeing converted from a 747-200 series to a 747-400 series, and there was no longer a need to stop in Hawaii for refueling purposes. And so Hawaii's power and focus as a bridge between East and West has faded somewhat as a consequence. And perhaps there was a revival with the APEC being held here, APEC conference last year.
2011.
2011. Boy, time flies, doesn't it? And so, so we've also seen, I mean, sadly, a fading of the significance of the East-West Center in terms of its financing. and it may fade out completely if they don't change their business model. And so, is Surabaya in a position, nobody knows about it, kind of like Hawaii was in 1967, I mean?
Correct. Well, if you look at it, Surabaya from the in-country perspective, remember Indonesia is about 240 million people plus, and out of that 240 million, 160 million lives in the island of Java, and Surabaya is the capital of East Java. And Surabaya commands the market of 70 million plus people. That covers the East Indonesia, right? So Surabaya is actually bridging the east and west of Indonesia internally. But if you look at it internationally, Surabaya is a manufacturing hub. For example, like furniture manufacturing is very strong. A lot of the exports went to the United States, or still going to the US and Europe and so forth. So there's a lot of activities from Surabaya going outside.
So Surabaya is kind of like this huge metropolis.
Yes.
Huge manufacturing center, undiscovered, kind of like Hawaii was in 1967.
Correct.
Only Hawaii was not ever able to claim the huge pieces that I just mentioned.
Right. So Hawaii, although, can learn from Surabaya in many ways, right?
How so?
Well, as you can see, Hawaii has still a very strong small business manufacturing. The macadamia nuts, the chocolates, things like that take advantage of Surabaya from two perspectives. One is selling the products to Surabaya market, right? And second is establishing a manufacturing facility in Surabaya in order to serve the Indonesian market. Because of the rising middle class that I shared with you before, that there will be higher consumption of this kind of products.
So you're suggesting that a Hawaii small business
Yes.
could take
Yes.
all or a piece of its manufacturing,
Right.
move it to Surabaya, which is a manufacturing hub,
Right.
and immediately explode its market for the Hawaii products within that 38 million population in that province alone.
Correct. Right. And there are many possibilities, right? Because in business, one thing lead to another. So a lot of time people think in a myopic way, thinking, oh, we're gonna outsource this manufacturing facility to another country, and that's not that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you establish a new facility, right, to be more competitive,
and you pick up a new market.
You pick up a new market at the same time, so you're not relying too much on your domestic consumption, right?
And the reason that you pick up a new market is that there is a middle class consumer market with all kinds of power in Indonesia, which you might not find in many other countries.
Correct, and because of this rising middle class market purchasing power, they're able to purchase that.
Why is the middle class in Indonesia rising? I mean,
well, I think partly because, not partly, mostly the Indonesian government, as you know, has done a lot of the anti-corruption program, so that in turn created more income to the country, right? It has a better tax system nowadays, so then you have more revenues coming in.
Vibrant democracy.
Vibrant democracies, as you can see when we're in Jakarta. The new governor is just common people. All of a sudden he got
Jokowi.
Jokowi got elected, and he won by popular vote from the constituents. So you have all these activities going on, and in overall economy is doing well because the consumption is increasing, right? Remember when we went to the U.S. Embassy and they shared the data that the Indonesian majority are people, the young people, people in their 30s, and they're rising and they have more income. So you have people, the double income, no kids. You have the double income with kids. Those are the young people that's rising.
This is a totally different demographic situation than exists in China today. And this is one thing that in my mind gives Indonesia the long-term staying power economically, because they've got it happening.
Right. I think the other linkage that we spoke about, remember there was a presenter from Kimberly-Clark,
Right.
The advantage of U.S. brand, right? We're talking about diapers, right? And the major competitions from Japan, because they've been there longer. but they were Huggies and Kimberly Clark. So from that perspective, the U.S. brand is still highly regarded by the Indonesian market, right? So U.S. manufacturers have that shot, have that opportunity if they're willing to go to the country and learn and establish presence, right? But because it's unknown, a lot of people have misconception, right? It's like a lot of people from Hawaii who've never been to Bali thinking like, I'm from Hawaii, why should I go to Bali? This happened to my personal friends.
Okay.
So when they went there, they all saw it themselves. It's different. You know, each place has its own beauty and it has its own uniqueness, but definitely Hawaii is not Bali. Bali is not Hawaii.
And Bali will be the subject of
our next topic.
Our next topic, our next part of this, third part of this series on Indonesia, and maybe there'll be some interesting news linking Hawaii with Bali at that time. We'll see when we get to that segment.
Right. So when the U.S. professor, we took them to Surabaya, we basically took them to a different manufacturing facility.
Okay, so now, real quick, both Surabaya and Jakarta are on the same island of Java.
Correct.
But you cannot simply jump on a highway to get from A to B, correct?
Correct. It's about 1,000 kilometers. So you can hop in a plane for 1 hour, and there's a lot of flights going back and forth.
1 hour.
1 hour.
Significant distance on one island.
Correct. And going back to the hub concept, Surabaya is actually the hub between the east of Indonesia to the west of Indonesia. Again, because of all the domestic flights are not the 400 series.
Right.
They're a smaller plane. They have to refuel. They also have to carry more passengers to be more productive. So if you ever go to Surabaya Airport, you'll see it's very bustling. It's just jam packed. Yeah.
And Surabaya is located on the east end of the island of Java, correct?
Correct.
Big port city?
It's a huge port city. Surabaya is a huge Navy base, similar to Hawaii.
Okay, and
so there's not a similarity.
So for our listeners, what's the size of Surabaya so they can picture this?
Well, it's in terms of population, right now it's about 10 million, the greater Surabaya, 10 million people. So that's a lot of people.
It's a lot bigger than Los Angeles.
Well, if you think of the entire state of Hawaii, we don't have too many people, right?
Right.
What, 1
million basically.
1.3, something like that. Yeah. So Surabaya itself has about, like I said, the greater Surabaya is about 10 million probably by now.
Okay, so now focusing on Surabaya, why do you say it's a manufacturing hub? Because I was there 20 years ago, and it was kind of 20 years ago, Surabaya was like a backwater provincial little town.
Well,
and it's just exploded in recent years.
Well, I think the exploding in a healthy fashion. For example, one of the bicycle factory that we visited, it's called Polygon. Interestingly, the owner of the bicycle company, Pak Suyanto, he actually had his master's in University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. So it was a good reunion with some of the professors. So you know, and so we asked him, how did he establish this manufacturing facility, right?
Okay.
So back in the day, when he returned from the U.S., he worked for his dad, who is just a typical bicycle importer, imported bicycles to Surabaya, and then sell it domestically. But then he was not satisfied with that. He opened his own company, which is manufacturing. So he built that from scratch. Now he's so big that he purchased a famous bicycle company in the Bay Area called Marines. So now he's entering Marines, Marines, and the Marines brand is very popular in the area. So he's entering the U.S. market. What's interesting, he said that the bicycle market is no longer bicycle. It's a fashion. It's a sport, not only sport but sport and fashion. So you can see in the design of his bike, is very, very modern. So from the visit or from the somebody who's never seen this kind of I guess phenomena, it's a good learning experience. That there's a lot of things are changing fast, and if you cannot keep up with these changes, you cannot survive. And Surabaya is a good manufacturing facility because for 3 reasons. One, the labor cost is relatively low. Right? And second, there is a lot of land. And third, it's a port city. So you need to export your product, you have to have a port. So from those 3 angles, it's easier. And I think the last point is Surabaya is not as congested as Jakarta. You know, we started getting congestion right now, traffic congestion.
Right.
But it's not as bad. So it's easy to navigate, easier to navigate in Surabaya.
easier to get around.
Correct.
You know, I suspect that many of our listeners, the notion that a firm in Indonesia, built from the ground up, so successful they could acquire an American firm and enter the U.S. market, never occurred to them.
Yep.
We have more about the new jewel of Surabaya when we come back after the break. We're back, we're live, and you can join the conversation by calling us at area code 808-296-5467. You are listening to AM 760 KGU, part of the Wall Street Business Network. Little shout out to Leah Rodriguez, who is our engineer there at KGU, and Mr. Jay Fidel. Shout out to Jay as well, who's operating our soundboard here in the studio, right here in downtown Honolulu. Our topic today, we're talking about Surabaya, Indonesia's spectacular manufacturing center. I'll translate that title for those of you in the business community. Surabaya is the undiscovered jewel of business in Indonesia, and lots of opportunities for Hawaii business. In the last segment of this show, we talked about Hawaii becoming a bridge and then perhaps a fading bridge between East and West. And in this segment of the show, we're talking about Surabaya, perhaps unknown today, but in the future becoming a manufacturing bridge between East and West. Lots and lots of undiscovered opportunities there. Our special guest in the studio is Mr. Amin Leiman, president of the Hawaii-Indonesia Chamber of Commerce. And I mean, before we get back into to some of the business aspects, you know, in the earlier in the show, we talked a little bit about the religious tolerance. The main mosque in Jakarta, across the street from the Roman Catholic Cathedral, and there is a very, very famous mosque in Surabaya, the Chonghe Mosque.
Correct.
Could you explain the significance of that mosque to our audience? Because it's a real eye opener to me.
Well, you know, as you know, David, in Indonesia, we have different ethnicities, and the Chinese are one of the ethnics. We are probably about 3%, and some of us actually are Muslims. Right, it's very small, but in percentage.
Chinese Muslims.
Chinese Muslim, Indonesian Chinese Muslims, and so the Chonghe Mosque is catered for the local Surabaya Chinese Muslim, Chinese Indonesian Muslim, right? But the Chonghe, as you probably remember, he was the admiral during the Ming Dynasty.
Right, the big 7-foot eunuch.
Exactly. He's actually he was sent to. I guess go around the world, and when he went to Indonesia, he was well received, right? This is 1400 now, and then people love him, and then how this mosque is established. So the mosque is actually called the masjid, which is mosque Muhammad Chonghe. So you have the Muhammad, which is Arabic, and Chonghe is Chinese. So it's an interesting combination, right?
Well, you know, I think the point that fascinates me is that you have this mosque located in Indonesia,
right,
that has a extremely strong linkage with China,
right,
and obviously an extremely strong linkage with the Middle East,
right,
and that is the fascinating religious potential geopolitical power position.
Right.
That Indonesia finds herself in.
Yes. Indonesia, like you said, is very tolerant and very flexible in their view of other religions.
So let's go back now to the business side of Surabaya. You see presence in Surabaya of our beloved American brands of KFC and McDonald's?
Funny you ask. It's all over the place. So you see McDonald's, you see KFC, you see Pizza Hut, right? So if you think about all the American franchise has a high standards. You know, you have to, in order to keep the franchise, anywhere in the world, but especially U.S. products. So they have to have a good quality raw materials. So, but you cannot import it to the countries is too expensive, right? So they need the local producers. So guess what? One of these local meat producers, chicken producers, like similar to Tyson, the company is called Warner Coyle. We visited that company, and so they not only are into a chicken hatchery, but it's end to end, from the beginning, from the egg hatching to growing the chicken and producing the egg. And
so
then
they have a cemetery for chickens?
Not yet.
Okay.
But they were able to grow the market, and they have what's interesting is they have their own R&D department, which is interesting, right? To optimize the feed and to optimize the growing of the chicken and so forth.
Okay.
And one of the requirements in Indonesia is you have to certify the chicken. If it's halal, you have to certify, if it requires the halal certification, which is the Muslim way of, slaughtering the chicken, and in certain ways, and that they adhere to that manufacturing standards kind of thing. So, but the advanced technologies that they use and everything else, it's very fascinating for us to learn.
What other types of business facilities did you visit in Surabaya that might be of interest to our audience?
Well, other than that, we went to a laser cutting metal facilities, like metal plates.
Okay.
So when I first went to the factory and I saw, they're just making plates, and I asked him, who are your typical customers? And the guy mentioned, well, look at this product. And I was looking at the internal part of a barbecue pit, like a barbecue grill, which is all metals, but that's only the part. And then he showed me the whole picture of this giant barbecue pit that is made and designed by a U.S. person who lives in Bali. So this American lives in Bali, right? Goes to Surabaya, bring his design, manufacture this piece of metals, and then he would, I'm not sure where he manufactured the rest of his product, but then he combined it and he sell it to the U.S. So it requires precision, laser cutting. It also was interesting that they were able to create metal sculptures for parks, which is very beautiful, and it requires precision cutting. So there is the art portion, there is this functional portion of the business, which I think is interesting.
What's you know Surabaya very well, I mean, what's what's there for American business?
In terms of manufacturing, or just generally speaking?
You're an American business person, you're listening to this radio broadcast. Why Surabaya?
Well, Surabaya is growing and it has a lot of manufacturing capability. As part of your business growth, if you're in the manufacturing mode, you have to have that facility, right? So the facility is right there already. And Americans are great with ideas, especially novel ideas, new design, right? So if you want to test the market for Southeast Asia, for example, Surabaya is a good test market. Because remember, well, when on 2015, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which has 10 members, including Indonesia, will created this borderless ASEAN, right? Meaning like you can sell all these 10 countries with less barriers. So you now all of a sudden you have a market of 600 million people. So if I'm an American businessman, I will use Surabaya, right, as my focal point to serve the rest of Southeast Asia, rather than just using Surabaya as just a place. So you all of a sudden you have 600 million people that you market to, and then the second thing, you can also bring a lot of your less added value activities to Surabaya. So then you improve your more higher added value activities in the U.S. That's how we can become competitive. Right?
Very cool, very cool. You know, while you were in Surabaya, I had a very interesting meeting with some name brand Japanese high-tech company executives, a very large company in Japan that you would know. And they expressed, as a consequence of all the challenges going on with the Senkakus and the boycott of Japanese products, an extreme frustration with their plant operations in China. And they mentioned to me that, Surabaya was where they had established an initial backup manufacturing for their high-tech equipment, and that they intended in the years to come to expand that. And this conversation that we're having right now, and the Japanese example, kind of underscores the potential that Surabaya has if we look in the years to come as a manufacturing bridge between East and West. Sure.
Right. On the more practical aspects, if you are the first, for expats, if you will, when you go to Surabaya, right, the distance from the airport to the hotel, we have Sheraton, we have the Marriott's, it's very convenient. And the Sheraton Hotel, which all the U.S. professors were staying, is located adjacent to these malls, and it's modern mall, right? So, it's not as grandeur as the one we saw in Jakarta, but this series of malls is very convenient.
Well,
so,
wait on the mall. There are listeners here that would be interested to know, how does the mall in Surabaya that you're talking about, how does it compare to Ala Moana?
Oh,
be honest now. Come on, now, tell it straight.
I guess honestly, it's not even a comparison, right?
Because what does that mean?
It's the mall in Surabaya is high tech, high feel, high standards. You want the high brand that you saw here, like the Louis Vuitton, everything else. It's unbelievable. With that being said, though, this past weekend, my wife took me to the Galleria in Waikiki, and I don't know, you've been there lately. There was one particular section, when I went there, I swear, I thought I was in Asia, because that is the standards. So it has the new Galleria has been remodeled as all the high-end stuff, which primarily, I think, here for the Chinese.
This is the DFS Galleria?
Correct.
Okay.
It's been completely remodeled.
In Waikiki?
Yeah, that is the new standard. So that's the kind of environment that you see in Surabaya.
So someone here who wants to get a feel for shopping in Surabaya, go to the DFS Waikiki, and
right.
Pretty good comparison.
Right. In fact, in the Sheraton Hotel, there were two retail shops, Louis Vuitton and Mont Blanc.
All right, we have more about Surabaya when we come back after the break. We're back, we're live, and you can join the conversation by calling us at area code 808-296-5467. We're talking about Surabaya, Indonesia's spectacular manufacturing center. And for those of you who just joined the program, it is said that Indonesia is the large Asian country that Americans know very little about, and boy, I'll tell you, that is an absolute tourism. But if they do know anything about Indonesia, it's about the capital of Jakarta. That's maybe where they visited, or perhaps maybe they visited Bali. In this particular program, we're focused on Surabaya, which is, over the last couple of decades, has really exploded as Indonesia's business jewel. It's the second largest city in the country and has become a significant new player in Indonesian business as a manufacturing hub. And I mean, the size of Surabaya is just absolutely staggering. The province is, what did you say,
38 million.
38 million
people, right.
And the size of the metropolis, the city itself, is?
It's about 10, probably.
So we're talking about Surabaya and its immediate environs is larger than, what, Singapore and Malaysia combined?
I would think yes, that's true. That is true. That is true.
It's an unbelievable domestic market.
Yes. And early on, we talked about this Surabaya as a port city. One of the companies that we visited is called Siam Maspion, a terminal facility. And the Siam part is a Thai company.
Okay.
Right? It's a Siam Cement company. So it's a joint venture between Siam Cement and the Maspion, who is originally into, they manufacture homeware, your pots and pans kind of thing. But they have since then, they have banks, and now they're getting into this port facility. So we asked them, how did you get into this facility, right? We actually went to the port, and they built this jetty and to facilitate a lot of the LNGs, liquefied natural gas ships to come into Surabaya, because the port has been congested. Because the government could not keep up with this growth, the private sector stepped in, which is an interesting business model.
Oh,
right?
yeah, it is.
Usually you work for the government to step in, and then you keep complaining, nothing happened in the past, in the next 20, 30 years. In this situation, Maspion brought Siam, and then they built this facility, and they're making a lot of money, because then all of a sudden you can facilitate this new port.
So they've actually generated a piece of the port that is specifically for liquefied natural gas.
Right.
Offloading.
So, correct. So it's very innovative. And then now they're going to build a normal cargo facility. Now they have this capability.
They're going to build a private sector container port.
Right. So think about it. A simple light manufacturing, right, business owner, right, morph into a banker. Now he, more further to this industrial estate / terminal facility. To me, it's amazing.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. I mean, you are the president of the Hawaii International Chamber of Commerce, and we talked a little bit earlier about the UN increasing its demands on Indonesia for peacekeepers because of their cross-cultural skills and success in the Middle East, and the earlier program in this segment we talked about the training of those Indonesian peacekeepers being done by the Hawaii National Guard.
Right.
And the Hawaii Indonesia Chamber of Commerce has an event coming up
on February 7th.
February 7th.
At 8 a.m. at the state capitol. So for those of you who would like to come and join us, if you can check it out at our Facebook, which is Hawaii Indonesia Chamber of Commerce, and or you can call me at 225-4554.
Okay, but this is a very unusual program because we have military presenter briefing, doing essentially tips, teaching, and strategy for the business community. What's this connection all about?
Well, I think that's another secret gem that we don't know. The Hawaii National Guard and the connection with Indonesia. General Wong has been to Indonesia many times, as you know, and General Wong also has an MBA, which allows him to bridge all this political risk, country risk, to economic risk, to business risk, turn it into opportunities, right? So that's the kind of things that we want to learn from him. What kind of opportunities that we can take advantage of from Indonesia.
So this is February 7th?
February 7th.
8 a.m.?
8 a.m. at the Capitol.
At the Capitol.
Right.
And that would be General Wong and the Hawaii National Guard doing a formal briefing for the Hawaii Indonesia Chamber of Commerce.
Right. It's also a good opportunity just to meet with us, with you and I, and our board members, and just to get acquainted and learn more about Indonesia and Surabaya in particular.
Let's turn now to a kind of step away from Surabaya, if we can, and let's talk about the Hindu piece of Indonesia that actually is, in a lot of ways, more closely allied with Hawaii, and that is the island of Bali.
Right.
And Bali is coming up this fall to host APEC.
That is correct. And Bali physically is about the size, larger than Oahu, if I'm not mistaken. But Bali has been able to preserve its culture for many generations. If you go to the city, of course, you have all of modern technology and so forth, but the technology and the Western influence never really penetrates the Balinese way of living. You'll see a lot of rituals, a lot of activities, a lot of temple activities.
So let me remind the listeners now, Indonesia is a Muslim majority country, and the important word in that sentence is majority.
Majority, correct.
And so Bali is not Muslim.
Bali is, the majority of the Balinese are Hindus, right?
And that culture has been preserved nicely on that island.
Correct. And they're very, very friendly people, nice place to rejuvenate yourself.
So what's the business connection between Bali and Hawaii? I mean,
well, both places rely on tourism, right?
Okay.
So in a way that you can learn from each other, but in terms and outriggers hotels have a presence in Bali, so there's that connection. Surfing industry or surfing facility or surfing hobbies, whatever you want to call it. There's both places, right? So you have that connectivity. But Bali is also a spiritual place like Hawaii. So there's that going. So
Interesting.
And in fact, the newest tour program in Bali is a spiritual tour, where you go to a nice hotel, but it's away from the tourist area, and you're there for 3 days, and then you embrace this, stillness and learn about spiritual things of Bali and so forth. So it's a very, very tranquil. A lot of the executives love that program, so it's getting very popular.
These are American executives or Asian executives or both?
No. All executives, doesn't matter. It's Americans, Europeans, even local executives are attending this retreat, if you will. Right?
On Bali.
In Bali, yes.
Well, I mean, thank you very much. This has been a fascinating program, and that's all the time that we have for it, folks. Just remember, Surabaya is Indonesia's business jewel. Drive safely, and we'll see you next week.